The coffee was still warm when she realized something was off. The usual clink of his spoon against the mug? Absent. The bathroom door creaking shut? Nothing. The faint shuffle of slippers on tile. The sound of the garage opening. Even the stupid podcast he played on speaker while brushing his teeth gone. Just stillness. She called out once. No reply. She checked the bedroom. Closet empty on his side. The drawer where he kept his keys, his worn wallet, even that old charger he never replaced. All of it cleared out like it had never been used. Not packed. Not hidden. Just gone. First, she thought maybe he stormed off. Dramatic, she figured. Maybe he'd be back with a snide comment and some passive-aggressive grocery store flowers. But then she opened her email. A notification from the county registrar. Subject line, property transfer confirmation. She clicked. The house deed transferred into her name. Fully. No co-ownership. No conditions. Just hers. Another email pinged. Vehicle title, both cars now in her name. Ping. Joint checking? Transferred to her. Balance intact. She blinked, confused. Refreshed the screen. Opened the attachments. No mistakes. No fraud. His signature was there. Timestamped 3:02 a.m. Digital notary seal verified. Still trying to process it. She got up and looked out the window. His car was gone from the driveway. Not parked down the block. Not at the curb. Just gone. She didn't panic. Not right away. Instead, she exhaled through her nose, almost laughed. So this is his tantrum, she muttered, heading to the kitchen. Signs everything over like he's Gandhi. Cute. She poured herself the rest of the coffee, still warm, and sat at the kitchen island like it was any other day. Sipped slowly, waiting for the adrenaline to kick in. Didn't. She checked her phone again. No texts. No missed calls. His number didn't even ring. It was marked inactive. She opened the security camera app. Last recording, 2:47 a.m. There he was, in a dark hoodie, no suitcase, just holding a manila folder. He got in the car. Drove off. That was it. She watched it twice, then 3 times. Paused the frame. Zoomed in. The look on his face. Calm. Not bitter. Not defeated. Just clean. Like someone taking out the trash. She leaned back and stared at the ceiling, trying to piece it together. Not once in their 6-year marriage had he raised his voice. He never made demands. Never threw things. Never cheated, at least not that she could prove or even suspect. He just sat in the background. Steady. Quiet. Predictable. She used to joke he was like a houseplant. Give him some sunlight and coffee, and he'd survive anything. Apparently not anymore. And hey, before I go any further, if you're still listening, take 2 seconds to hit that subscribe button. Seriously. Over 97% of people never do, and it genuinely helps our whole team bring you better stories. Alright, back to the mess. By late afternoon, she'd gone from smug amusement to pacing the living room. She opened drawers. Checked cabinets. The medicine drawer, his prescriptions were gone. The kitchen, his favorite whiskey bottle wasn't touched, but the backup bottle behind the spice rack gone. Even his ragged blue hoodie that he always wore when he got home from work was missing from the hook by the door. Everything important to him taken. Everything valuable given away. She called his work. The line rang twice. This is Dylan at Greystone. Who's calling? This is Maya, Gavin's wife. A pause. Ah. Gavin submitted his resignation 2 days ago. Effective immediately. Did he leave any forwarding information? No, sorry. It was all done by email. Nothing in person. We figured he had something lined up. She hung up. No goodbye. No 2-week notice. Just a signed letter and silence. She called his best friend, Rob. Dude, Rob said, sounding groggy. I haven't talked to him since the barbecue last month. He seemed fine. Maybe a little quiet. He was always quiet. That night, she poured herself a glass of wine and stood in the doorway of the garage. His workbench was gone. Tools gone. Even the dented old toolbox from college gone. In its place sat one thing. A rusted nail hammered directly into the wall. She stared at it for a long time, like it was a clue, a warning, a joke, or maybe a message. Because even now, a part of her still believed this was an elaborate protest. That in a week, he'd call from some cabin in the woods, give her his final offer, ask for a divorce settlement, or maybe try to guilt her with a breakdown story. But as the sun set, and the notifications stopped, and the silence kept ringing in her ears, she realized something unsettling. He didn't storm out. He didn't rage or cry or beg. He vanished. Completely. Cleanly. And that scared her more than anything else. The next morning, she tried to call again, out of some strange mix of principle and irritation, just to prove to herself he wasn't that dramatic. But the number didn't ring. Just a cold, robotic voice. This number is no longer in service. She blinked at the screen. Tried again. Same message. Out of habit, she opened their shared Netflix profile to stream something brainless, only to find the login rejected. She reset the password. Error. Account not found. Spotify. Gone. Amazon Prime? The account had been closed. She switched from annoyance to anger in seconds, stormed to her laptop, and tried their shared Dropbox folder. The one with all their scanned receipts, insurance documents, travel plans, wedding photos, tax files. It was empty. A single folder remained, titled Archived. Inside, a lone PDF. Distribution finalized, per Clause C. She didn't remember signing anything called Clause C. Didn't remember agreeing to a distribution. But the signature looked like hers and the date matched. 2 years ago, nestled between refinancing papers and that time she co-signed the gym membership for his cousin. The air felt tighter suddenly, like the house itself had shifted half an inch off its foundation. When she opened the fridge, she noticed the oddest thing. Nothing was missing, and yet everything had changed. His almond milk gone. His stupid Korean chili paste that he insisted on putting in scrambled eggs. Gone. His vitamin stash in the top cabinet? Vanished. But the kitchen still looked full. That was the unnerving part. He didn't just leave. He peeled himself out. No mess. No drama. Just removal. Her sister called later that day. So where is he? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I mean, I woke up, and he was gone. You didn't fight? No. You didn't say anything? No. There was a pause. Then, well, that's not normal, Maya. She was about to argue when a knock came at the door. FedEx delivery. She signed, barely glancing at the man, and tore open the envelope once she was back inside. Inside was a cancellation notice. His name removed from the dog's vet account, effective immediately. Primary contact updated to her cell. She stared at it, then looked down at Baxter, their rescue shepherd mix. He stared back, head tilted, tail gently thumping the floor. He didn't seem to notice a damn thing was off. That night, she opened the drawer in the hallway where they kept random tech stuff. Cables, remotes, USBs. She wasn't even sure what she was looking for. She found a flash drive with his initials. Plugged it into her laptop. Nothing. Blank. No files. She ran recovery software because of course she did. One folder had been erased 3 days earlier. Name. Last will alt copy. She didn't know whether to laugh or scream. The next day, her parents stopped by. Her mom brought leftover stew. Like it was still 2003 and Maya was recovering from a breakup with a college boyfriend. Her dad leaned in, voice low. You sure he didn't leave a note? A letter? Anything? No. You two weren't fighting? No. Then why would he just? I don't know, Dad. She snapped, louder than intended. Baxter whined. They didn't press further. But later, when her mom was washing dishes, she overheard her whispering to her dad in the other room. It's like he planned this. And that's when the idea really settled in. This wasn't a breakdown. This wasn't an impulsive escape. This was a procedure. Each day afterward proved it. The joint savings account was intact, still accessible, but anything with his name on it? Vanished. Even their wedding playlist on Spotify, the one he never liked but kept for her? Deleted. Even the old shared email address, the one they used for home bills? Shut down. When she emailed it, she got an automatic reply. This inbox is no longer monitored. By week 2, the only thing left of him was a blurry photo on her phone's lock screen, and even that began to feel less like a memory and more like a glitch. Her therapist asked, Have you considered that he might be in some kind of crisis? She laughed. The therapist didn't. People don't vanish like this without reason, the woman said softly. Maya replied, You think I don't know that? But that wasn't the part that was eating at her. The part she couldn't shake? He hadn't left behind a single question. He just removed himself like an old extension cord, coiled and boxed away neatly, quiet, polite, like he'd waited for her to stop watching, and pulled the plug when she blinked. It started with an email from her mortgage provider. Subject line, Update to primary lien holder. She thought it was spam at first, Just another one of those phishing things with bad logos and weird grammar. But the formatting was perfect. Her full legal name, her correct address, property ID matched. She clicked through. The message was simple. Please note the mortgage for property ending in -0837 has been purchased by Ashmere Trust Holdings. No action required. Ashmere? She'd never heard of it. No logo. No signature. Just a P.O. box in Delaware and a dry assurance that terms remain unchanged. She called the bank. The rep sounded calm. Too calm. Yes, ma'am. That trust is now listed as your lender. Transferred last week. No change to your payment schedule. But I didn't authorize this. You wouldn't have needed to. It was a sale on the back end. Perfectly legal. Happens all the time. But, a trust? Yes, ma'am. Can you tell me who's behind it? No, ma'am. Ashmere is a private entity. You'd need a subpoena to see the trustees. The word subpoena hit like a wet slap. She ended the call, tossed her phone on the counter, and stood there, fuming. The kitchen light flickered overhead. She didn't move. The next morning, her Amex declined at the grocery store. She tried again. Declined. Pulled out her backup Visa. Also declined. A little embarrassed, she left the groceries and drove straight home, digging through her purse for login credentials. She hadn't missed a payment. Her balances were low. Credit score solid. But when she logged in, both cards were marked under review for unusual activity. No fraud alerts. No explanations. Just a vague message. Please allow 3 to 5 business days. She called customer service. Ma'am, has there been any recent change in your income verification? Or a new lien against any of your assets? No. Why? Because our system flagged a mismatch with a third-party lien clearance document filed on your behalf. She froze. Filed by who? I'm sorry. I can't disclose that without your authorization code. I am the account holder. Correct. But the document didn't originate from your account. You'll need to file a dispute. She hung up and immediately called her accountant. Gary had been handling her taxes since before the marriage. Dry guy, always wore tan blazers and said things like, strategic liquidity. He answered on the second ring. Maya, I was about to call you. Then save me the suspense. He sighed. Did you sign off on a lien release on your home equity account? No. Well, someone did. And it passed all verification. Dated 6 months ago. 6 months. It triggered an internal review across your credit lines. I'm assuming because it coincided with that trust acquiring your mortgage. They're cross-referencing everything now. She went silent. Maya? He asked. She barely whispered. He's not that smart. Who? My husband. Ex-husband. Whatever he is. Gary didn't respond. She hung up and drove to her sister's place that evening. They sat at the kitchen bar, eating overpriced takeout and drinking Chardonnay like they were in some low-budget divorce drama. He's not that smart, she said again, stabbing a spring roll. Her sister raised a brow. Didn't he use to handle all the tax paperwork? Yeah, but I always double-checked. Except the stuff you signed without reading. Maya's fork froze midair. Relax, her sister said. I'm just saying, he always struck me as quiet, not stupid. Thanks. They ate in silence for a while. You know what this feels like? Her sister said, pouring more wine. Like those spy thrillers, where the guy fakes his own death and drains the bank accounts. He didn't drain anything. He gave me everything. Exactly, her sister said, eyes narrowed. That's what's creepy. He left the house, the cars, and kept the landlord keys. You think you own the place, but maybe he owns the ground you're standing on. Maya rolled her eyes, but her stomach turned. Later that night, she pulled out their old joint file box. Labeled tabs, utility bills, warranty receipts, and beneath it all, a folder marked prenup plus amendments. She'd never really looked through it. He handled the logistics. She was more of a big-picture person. Inside, buried under photocopies and highlighted clauses, she found a notarized document titled Contingency Lien Clauses, activated upon dissolution, silent, signed, stamped, dated, by her. 2 years ago. She didn't even remember doing it. The only note in the margin, in her handwriting, read, Yeah, whatever. She leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time, she wasn't angry because he was gone. She was angry because he planned it better than she ever saw coming. The lawyer she hired came with a glowing Yelp review and an expensive wristwatch. Wore fitted suits, had that faux casual tone that screamed, hourly billing, and spoke in 3-word sentences. Not unusual, he said after she'd explained everything. Spouse leaves. Assets shift. Happens. She leaned forward. This isn't shifting. This is extraction. Surgical. Like he dissolved himself. He tapped his pen. Will subpoena records. Banking, employment, DMV. Maybe he popped up somewhere. He didn't. Not once. His name didn't exist in any recent job registries. No payroll entries. No unemployment filings. His social security number hadn't been used in over 13 months. Not for health insurance, not for prescriptions, not even to renew a damn library card. The lawyer passed her off to a PI, one of those leathery ex-detectives who looked like he hadn't had a restful night since Nixon. People don't vanish, the PI said. They either die or they hide. You sure he didn't off himself? She shot him a glare. He's not dead. Good. That makes it fun. She waited 3 weeks. The PI came back with 1 manila folder and a cup of gas station coffee. He laid the folder on the table. Your husband, or whatever you want to call him, wasn't just hiding. He evacuated. Meaning he didn't just cut off the cards and move to a cabin. He rewrote the back end. The report was methodical. Clean. He'd liquidated his personal accounts 8 months before he vanished. Slowly. Always under reporting thresholds. Always in rounded sums. $2, $800 here, $3,200 there. Transferred through mid-tier crypto exchanges that no longer existed. Some addresses pinged through Romania, some through Panama. Phone records? Terminated clean. No ported numbers. No voicemail backups. No forwarding. He hadn't just vanished from her life. He'd vanished from all the systems that track people. IRS, DMV, LinkedIn, Facebook, even his fantasy football league. The PI leaned back. This guy ever talk offshore accounts? Privacy laws? Anything like that? She hesitated. He once mentioned that Delaware's laws were basically corporate Swiss cheese. Smart man, the PI muttered. She tried to play it off. He always sounded smart, in that pretentious bookworm kind of way. But he wasn't like this. The PI raised an eyebrow. Lady, I've hunted down cartel couriers who were easier to trace. If he wasn't this smart before, he became it. And well before he walked. Later that day, she sat across from her lawyer, who was frowning at a long printout of shell entity registrations. He flipped it toward her. Recognize any of these? She scanned the names. Ashmere Holdings, Fireroot LLC, Gideon Recovery Trust. Her throat dried. A few of these entities intersect with recent land transfers, mortgage consolidations, even healthcare consulting services. All filed in the last 3 years. All incorporated anonymously. All legally watertight. He paused, looking over his glasses. This wasn't a meltdown. This was an exit plan. But why? She said. We weren't hostile. He tilted his head. Didn't need to be. Sometimes people don't burn bridges. They build tunnels. Her fingers gripped the arms of the chair. I want to file a motion. Something that forces disclosure. To who, Maya? The bank? The trust? None of them are doing anything illegal. You have no grounds. No claim. You own everything he left you. Which, by the way, may have been part of the camouflage. She scoffed. So I just sit here while some mystery ghost version of him builds a life in the shadows? No, he said flatly. You adjust. That's what people do when they realize they didn't actually know the person they married. She walked out of that meeting lightheaded, her heels clicking on the tile floor of the office building like a metronome ticking down the seconds of her old life. That night, she poured herself a drink and sat on the edge of the guest bed. Her bed now, she guessed. Scrolled through old photos. His smile. His arm around her at that cabin in Vermont. Their anniversary dinner where he looked slightly sunburned and happy. Had that been real? Or was he already gone by then? Just acting out the role until the curtains closed? She opened an old email thread, one she'd forgotten, where he sent her a link to a documentary called How to Vanish in America. She'd mocked him for it at the time. What, planning a magic trick? She typed. He replied, You'd be surprised how little the system cares once you stop feeding it. She never responded. She stared at that line for a long time, rereading it like a riddle. He hadn't escaped her. He'd deleted himself from systems, from files, from memory. And she finally understood. He didn't need to run fast. He just needed to start early. The room above the hardware store smelled like dust and solder. No windows. One flickering overhead bulb. The mattress sat on the floor, foam, no frame. A single dented metal locker held 3 sets of clothes. All gray. All wrinkle-proof. He didn't care. He wasn't here to be comfortable. He was here to disappear without dying. The hardware store below him barely functioned. The owner, Carl, was a wheezing relic of a man who smoked menthols in the back office and kept receipts in shoeboxes labeled by season instead of date. Gavin, now calling himself Eli, noticed the chaos within the first week. Asked Carl if he wanted help sorting the books. Carl laughed, then coughed, then said, "You get M in order, you can sleep here rent-free." So he did. Quietly. Completely. He learned that cash flow wasn't the problem. Theft wasn't either. It was laziness. Carl was paying for tools he never sold and undercharging for the ones he did. The checkout system hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration. Eli rewrote it all by hand. Not out of generosity, but because chaos made him itch. He needed to build something, even if it wasn't his. During the day, he vanished into libraries, 3 different ones, rotated weekly. He read tax law, LLC structuring, forensic accounting case studies. Highlighted court documents with invisible bookmarks in his mind. Quiet. Precise. He didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't smile unless he had to. He watched the world like a man at war with noise. By year 1, he was helping the bakery across the alley with their monthly ledgers. By year 2, he was unofficially managing the books for 5 different businesses. Cash only. Under the table. No questions. Just results. None of them asked where he came from. He had a Midwestern politeness and an accent that adapted like smoke. If someone pressed, he said he'd had a bad split and needed to start clean. That usually shut people up. Everyone had run from something. He kept a burner laptop in a fireproof lockbox, used only for spreadsheets and remote filings. The only connection to his past was a sealed folder labeled primary leverage. He never opened it, but knowing it was there kept him grounded. Like a loaded chamber he never had to fire. The walls of the room remained bare, except for one photo. A clipped magazine cover taped above the mattress. Not of a person, of a building. The caption read, "Local district gets revived by unlikely investor." He'd cut it out not for vanity, but as a compass. He wanted his name on the next one. And the next. But not his name. Eli Hale. The name he'd purchased 3 years ago from a dead man's estate in a loophole state. He was methodical. Legal when necessary. Gray area when efficient. Every document, every identity, every account was layered behind legal proxies and non-traceable structures. He knew the system now, not just how to live inside it, but how to bleed it without leaving fingerprints. He didn't date, didn't mingle. If he needed human interaction, he'd walk the aisles of the local grocery store with a cart, pretending to shop while absorbing snippets of arguments and laughter from families who hadn't erased themselves. He wasn't bitter. He was evolving. The old version of him, the man who apologized when his wife mocked him at dinner parties, who paid the bills and got called controlling when he asked about expenses. That man had been dissected, studied, and buried. Eli Hale didn't apologize. Eli Hale understood leverage. By year 4, Carl handed him the keys to the store. "Been thinking about retiring. You want it?" Carl asked, scratching his neck with a pencil. "You've been running it anyway." Eli smiled, brief, calculated. "Sure. Let's draw up papers." The store came cheap. Carl didn't haggle. Just wanted out. Eli bought it under a secondary holding entity he'd structured 6 months earlier. The down payment came from dividends he'd routed through another set of consulting gigs. The day the paperwork finalized, he replaced the flickering bulb in his apartment. Not because it bothered him, but because it was the last remaining thing from his old life that still malfunctioned. He kept the mattress on the floor, but he bought a safe. Inside he placed 3 things: a new passport, a spare SIM card, and a small printed copy of the deed to the land his ex-wife's house still stood on. Not the house, the land. Because even from 4 states away he knew, eventually she'd try to refinance again. And that's when he'd remind her, gently and legally, "You can paint the walls, but you're still standing on my ground." The baby shower was loud in that way women's events always were, half laughter, half forced politeness. Maya hovered near the mimosa bar, pretending to care about a diaper raffle while checking her phone for credit score updates like it was a nervous tick. No major movement, The house was still locked under that ridiculous trust name. The refi wasn't going through. Again. Her lawyer was exploring other options, which meant waiting until she could afford a better lawyer. She pasted on a smile, nodded along to a joke about stretch marks, and took a plastic cup of champagne orange juice from a woman she didn't recognize. "You should read this," the woman said, pressing a rolled magazine into her free hand. "There's this guy, page 30-something, kind of brilliant, and I mean hot if you like the brooding type." Maya gave a tight smile, like she was amused, and tucked it under her arm. She had no intention of reading it. But once the third game of Guess the Pureed Food started, she slipped out onto the balcony, pulled out the magazine, and flipped aimlessly, looking for an excuse to scroll her phone without looking rude. Page 37. She blinked. The headline read, "The Quiet Capitalist, Reviving District 14. Below it, a photo. Her fingers stopped turning the page. He was standing outside an old brick factory, hands folded in front of him, suit perfectly tailored, hair shorter, the jawline sharper, the expression unrecognizable, cold, composed, not posed but utterly in control. A ghost, printed in ink. The caption read, "Gideon Hale, the reclusive financial architect behind Hale District Revitalization Trust, has quietly funneled resources into one of the most neglected industrial neighborhoods in the city. Colleagues call him a phantom investor. Always moving, never public, impossible to reach. Gideon Hale." Her knees buckled slightly as she lowered herself into the wrought iron patio chair. Her breath hitched in her throat. She read the article twice. His methods are unorthodox. He operates through layers of limited partnerships and holding firms. No public interviews, no social media. Even the reporter admitted. Tracking him down felt like solving a cold case. He wasn't just alive. He was flourishing. Not in some cave. Not on a remote beach with a fake mustache and a burner phone. No, he had built something. A trust. A holding company. A full-blown district named after him. She pulled out her phone and Googled Gideon Hale. Nothing personal. Just business articles, tax filings, mentions in real estate databases. A photo here and there. Always distant. Always filtered through a boardroom or ribbon cutting. But she knew that jaw. That stillness behind the eyes. She knew him. Except she didn't. Not anymore. Back inside, someone squealed about a diaper cake. Maya walked in stiffly, clutching the magazine like it might vanish. She left early, claiming a migraine. Sat in her car and stared at the picture again. All this time, she thought he'd retreated to lick his wounds. Some man-cave fantasy of wood stoves and loneliness. But he hadn't vanished. He'd ascended. And she hadn't seen it coming. Worse, she hadn't believed he was capable of it. Every time she told herself, he's not that smart, or he's too passive, or he's just trying to prove a point. She'd been talking to a version of him that no longer existed. Hell, maybe he never had. The new name wasn't a disguise. It was an upgrade. She went home, poured herself a drink, and opened the real estate listing for her house again. Scrolled down to the parcel owner section. Still listed, Ashmere Holdings. She checked the LLC registry. Ashmere Holdings was owned by, her stomach dropped, Hale Revitalization Trust. The same entity listed in the article. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the glass. She just sat back and whispered one sentence to the empty room. "Oh my God. He owns me." Not figuratively. Legally. She lived on land owned by the man she left. Correction. The man who left her, and left her looking downward, while he quietly built a skyscraper beneath her feet. The building didn't look like a place where ghosts lived. It looked like the kind of fortress where reality got rewritten. Steel beams, black glass, soft golden lighting even at 3 p.m. The kind of lobby that smelled like filtered money and eucalyptus. Hale Revitalization Trust had a brushed metal sign in the entryway, understated and discreet, mounted beside the elevator bank. She stood there, clutching her tote bag like it was armor. Her fingers trembled as she stepped toward the reception desk, where a woman with perfect posture and a Bluetooth earpiece gave her a closed-mouth smile. "Hi, I'm here to see Mr. Hale." The receptionist didn't blink. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I—" She pulled out her phone and held up a photo, her and Gavin, him, standing on a beach, arms wrapped around each other, sunburned and smiling. "He's my husband." Still no blink. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Hale doesn't accept personal visitors." "I'm not a visitor." I was married to him for 6 years. I lived with him. The woman's voice didn't rise, didn't falter. He's made it clear. No exceptions. If you'd like to submit a request in writing. No, she snapped. No, I don't want to submit a request like I'm applying for a loan. I want to talk to him. Just 5 minutes. A pause. Then, I'll notify security. That did it. Maya's voice dropped to a hiss. Do you even know who I am to him? Behind the glass wall near the elevators, a man stepped into view. Tailored charcoal gray suit. No tie. Crisp lines. Hair short. Shoulders squared. It was him. He was walking slowly, in conversation with another man in a blue jacket, pointing at something on a tablet. His stride was smooth, grounded. He didn't see her, or he did and simply didn't react. Didn't flinch. Didn't pause. Didn't look. She stepped toward the glass. The receptionist's voice followed. Ma'am, please do not approach the restricted area. But she didn't move closer. She just stood there, one hand pressed against the glass like an animal watching someone it used to recognize. Her reflection warped against it. He passed out of frame, never turned his head. The doors shut behind him, and that was the moment it hit her. Not like a slap, but like sinking in quicksand. Heavy, slow, inevitable. She wasn't his anymore. She wasn't anything. She stood in that lobby too long. Long enough to become scenery. The receptionist returned to her emails. Security watched but didn't act. A man with coffee passed by and didn't spare her a glance. She wasn't a threat. She was irrelevant. Eventually, she walked out. The sun was still bright. People still smiled on sidewalks. A jazz trio played outside a wine bar across the street. Life, inconveniently, kept happening. She ducked into an alleyway beside the building and sat on a loading dock, breathing like someone who'd just come up from underwater. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. Any update? Did you talk to him? She didn't reply. Instead, she opened the photo app and zoomed in on the beach picture. Her eyes, his arm around her, the grainy filter, a time capsule from a life that had been quietly deleted from the cloud. She stared at his face. It was too soft, too open. He didn't look like the man behind that glass wall, because that man wasn't just different. He was built from the bones of the one she thought she knew. And she hadn't been invited to the construction. The new lawyer was younger than the last, hungrier, sharper, and less inclined to sugarcoat. She came recommended by a friend who'd been through hell with an ex-husband who thought he was slick. Maya figured she needed someone with claws now, not charm. They met in a sterile office downtown. No art, no distractions, just documents and fluorescent honesty. The lawyer, Lexi, had a legal pad full of notes and 2 folders that looked like they'd been through a war. One red, one navy. You said he left everything to you, right? Lexi asked, not looking up. Yeah. And you believed that was the end of it? Maya didn't like the tone, but she kept her voice even. He signed over the house, the cars, the joint accounts. Didn't even contest. It was like he wanted me to win. Lexi finally looked at her. No, Maya. He wanted you occupied. She opened the red folder. During the initial asset transfer, she said, tapping the top page, you co-signed a clause labeled contingency conditions in case of personal dissolution. Ring a bell. Maya furrowed her brow. Maybe that was buried in one of the refinance packages, I think. He told me it was just boilerplate. Worst case stuff. Lexi smiled without warmth. Well, turns out it wasn't boilerplate. It was a strategic device. She slid the page forward. Maya scanned it. Her own signature stared back at her, dated 18 months before he disappeared. The clause read, in the event of voluntary marital dissolution without legal contestation, all physical and financial assets shall revert to agreed-upon distribution based on Annex C, signed and notarized. All parties agree to forfeit claim to renegotiation. She blinked. What the hell is Annex C? Lexi opened the Navy folder and pulled out a stapled packet. It was a breakdown of everything they'd owned. But what stunned her wasn't what was listed. It was how it was listed. The house hers, but only the structure. The land, leased indefinitely to Ashmere Holdings LLC. The vehicles, hers. But the titles retained an override clause in the event of tax liens, redirecting control back to the primary cosigner, which was, somehow, still listed as a trust under his secondary entity. Even the dog's microchip registry had been switched 6 months before he vanished, to list her as secondary emergency contact. It wasn't just that he'd left. It was that he'd sculpted her reality before he walked out the door. Maya stood abruptly. This can't be legal. It's airtight, notarized, all signatures clean. And the best part? You initialed every page. I didn't know what I was signing. That's not how contracts work, unfortunately. Lexi pulled out a final document, one Maya didn't recognize at all. This one's fascinating. Filed 6 weeks before he vanished. He purchased the land beneath your house through a chain of shell companies. Started with something called Fireroot Holdings, transferred through 2 intermediaries in Nevada, and ended with Ashmere. You live on land you don't own. Maya's jaw clenched. Lexi leaned back. It's like he turned your entire life into a lease you never read. She wanted to scream. Instead, she laughed. Sharp. Bitter. I skimmed those papers on the couch while watching Chopped. I asked if I needed to really read them, and he said, "You trust me, right?" Lexi didn't say a word, just stared. And that silence said everything. Later that night, Maya pulled out the old manila folder where she'd kept their wedding documents. Buried in the bottom was a handwritten list he'd once made. A list of books to read together someday when we're not too tired. One of the titles was The Art of War. She'd laughed when he added it. "Seriously?" she'd said. "You think we're going to need to strategize our way through marriage?" He just smiled. "It's never about war," he'd said. "It's about preparation." Now, sitting alone in a house she didn't technically control, surrounded by furniture bought with a credit card under review, she finally understood. He didn't leave her in anger. He left her in checkmate. The envelope arrived in plain cream paper. No return address, no handwriting. Just her name, Maya Ellis, and a wax-sealed card tucked inside. Industrial Renaissance Awards, honoring visionary contributors in urban renewal. Honorary guest, Gideon Hale. She reread the name 3 times. The first time in disbelief. The second in confusion. The third with something closer to fury. No one else would send it. He had to know it would reach her. The event was 3 weeks out. Black tie. Downtown hotel. The same venue they once walked past years ago, when she jokingly said, "Maybe one day you'll get invited to one of these suits and champagne galas." He'd laughed, said, "Only if they lower the standards." Apparently they hadn't. She debated not going, or crashing it in sneakers just to make a point. But the curiosity itched too hard. So she booked a stylist. Rented a gown, midnight blue, tailored at the waist, safe but striking. She practiced how she'd walk in, what she'd say. She wanted to make him the ghost this time. She arrived late on purpose. The lobby was already humming with chatter and string music. Photographers hovered like mosquitoes. Inside, the ballroom was a forest of glass, brass, and ambition. Crystal chandeliers, sleek name tags, laughter that floated just a second too long. She scanned the room, then saw him. He stood near the stage, mid-conversation with a group of journalists. Tall, unbothered, sharp as ever in a black suit with a subtle charcoal pinstripe. His hair had that careless precision of someone who could afford to pretend not to care. His posture was effortless but grounded, like a man with nothing to prove and everything already calculated. He was smiling, genuinely. She waited, watched. He moved from one group to another, shaking hands, answering questions, nodding politely when someone praised his district redevelopment initiative. She noticed something terrifying. He didn't scan the crowd once, didn't look for her, didn't expect her. She approached the champagne table and tried to breathe. The dress felt tighter now. Her heart beat too loud, drowning the room's polite piano music. She kept her distance, shadowed his path as he made his way through the orbit of wealth and power. An investor with $1 billion laugh said something to him that made the whole group chuckle. Gideon or Gavin or whoever he was now smiled back and responded. She caught only fragments. Multi-phase zoning, asset rotation triggers, liquidation windows. The man who used to spend 15 minutes picking cereal brands was now charming city planners and legacy developers like he belonged among them. She waited until he peeled away to take a call near the side stairwell. One of those old carved oak ones meant for staff and executives. This was her moment. She followed. He ended the call, slipped the phone into his pocket, turned, and saw her. Only then. No surprise crossed his face. No smile. No flinch. Just recognition. Like seeing a poster from a movie you once watched a lifetime ago. "Why did you vanish?" she asked, the words dry in her throat. He studied her for a beat, not like a man revisiting a memory, like a man scanning a portfolio for risk. His eyes flicked down. Gown, shoes, posture, then back to her face. She caught the flicker, not of affection, of confirmation, like she'd arrived exactly as he thought she would. Her hands curled slightly. After everything, you couldn't even give me a sentence? He stepped closer, just enough that his voice didn't need to carry. He looked her over once more, and said, "I'll give you one now," then paused. She waited. 1,000 imagined versions of this moment collapsed at her feet. And he gave her nothing. No anger, no apology, just the cold weight of a man who owed her neither. He turned, walked back toward the ballroom. As he pushed the door open, applause erupted from inside. Someone must have called his name. Honorary guest. She stood frozen on the steps, breathing shallow, her rented gown suddenly feeling like a costume for a role she'd been cut from years ago. She hadn't come to destroy him. She'd come to remind him she existed. But she realized, too late, she wasn't even a postscript. She was the footnote to a clause he'd already voided. He reappeared later that evening on stage, hand lightly gripping the clear podium as the MC rattled off his accolades. Revitalized 4 industrial corridors across 2 counties. Created over 2,000 jobs. Instrumental in the formation of sustainable urban models now being copied in 6 other states. And yet, still manages to avoid every camera lens we throw at him. Please welcome our honorary guest, Mr. Gideon Hale. Applause burst like a wave. He walked slowly to the microphone, nodding slightly, never grandstanding. He spoke briefly, confidently. Thanked the planners, the community organizers, the anonymous donors. Never once used the word I. She watched from the far edge of the ballroom. Not in the crowd but just outside it. Behind a floral column. Half hidden. She didn't clap. She didn't breathe. He was finished. Not performing. Not rising. Finished. Full circle. Solid. The man who used to stand behind her at parties like a polite afterthought was now the gravity in the room. Everyone leaned toward him. Even those who didn't know why. The applause lasted longer than she expected. And then he descended the stage. She moved. Out from behind the column. Across the dance floor. Past donors and journalists, and the smiling couple from earlier who'd mistaken her for catering staff. She stepped in front of him again. This time he paused. Just a breath. Not out of deference. Out of finality. "I asked you something," she said, voice lower now. Less tremble. Less plea. He didn't answer. Just studied her again. Not with malice. With clean disinterest. And then he stepped close. So close she could smell whatever expensive, subtle cologne he wore now. Not the Old Spice she once teased him for. Something cooler. Dry. He looked her in the eye. "Because silence," he said, "makes the loudest kind of peace." She blinked. Then he stepped around her. Effortlessly. Not even brushing her arm. He crossed the floor. Someone handed him a drink. A young woman with a badge and clipboard leaned in to whisper something in his ear. He smiled faintly and nodded. Then the lights shifted again. A new name called on stage. A new round of applause. And he was gone. Consumed by it. Not hidden. Just absorbed. Maya didn't follow. Didn't cry. Didn't move. She stood there. Heels aching. Makeup holding. But inside? Caved. Not because he beat her. Because he never needed to. He didn't scream. Didn't gloat. Didn't seek revenge or even catharsis. He left her everything she thought she wanted. And built the rest somewhere else. In silence. In peace. In full. She was left with noise. Echoes. The unbearable what-ifs. No one noticed as she slipped out the side exit into the cold night. The stars were hidden behind streetlight glow. Her reflection followed her in every glass window she passed. Woman in gown, perfect makeup, walking alone. The sidewalk didn't care who she was. Neither did he. Not anymore.